The blast came before the fear, a rolling wall of fire and metal screaming through the narrow corridor as thousands of refugees tried to escape the lower decks. And in the middle of that chaos, Evan Cole saw a small alien girl frozen in place, her bright silver eyes wide as the world shattered around her. He did not think. He did not calculate. He simply moved, his boots sliding on the metal floor as he threw himself toward her with every last bit of strength in his body. His arms wrapped around her just as the charge detonated. And for a heartbeat, everything turned white, like a silent universe swallowing them whole. Then the sound returned all at once, a crushing roar that slammed into Evan's armor and filled his ears with ringing pain. Shrapnel tore into his side and shoulder, punching through plates that should have protected him, sending a hot wave of agony through his body. But he kept holding her, shielding her, refusing to let go. The shockwave hurled them against a wall, lights burst overhead, and the little girl trembled under his arms as dust fell like gray rain. Evan tried to breathe but tasted metal and blood, yet he whispered to her that she was safe even though he did not know if he could keep that promise. Her fingers gripped his chest plate with desperate strength, and she whispered a single trembling word in her language. A word he had only heard once during a peace lecture, a word that meant thank you. His vision dimmed at the edges, the corridor blurry and distant, figures running, alarms screaming, and he felt his knees give way as the pain finally overwhelmed him. The girl's face was the last thing he saw, her eyes glowing softly in the flickering light, her small hand shaking as she reached to steady him. Then darkness swept in like a tide and swallowed everything. Evan did not know how long he drifted in that darkness. It felt like floating in cold water, hearing echoes of voices he couldn't recognize, seeing flashes of old memories, his mother's gentle voice, the red dust of Mars during the uprising, the sound of soldiers laughing in the barracks, and the quiet promise he made long ago to never abandon anyone who needed him. The darkness thinned slowly, becoming threads of light twisting around him, and then, with a sudden pull like a hand grabbing his collar, he woke. He opened his eyes to a harsh white glow above him, a ceiling made of old, polarized tiles humming with static energy. His breath hitched as he realized he wasn't in a hospital or a rescue station. Instead, he was lying on a cold, circular floor surrounded by towering shadows. Men and women in ancient earth armor standing in a wide ring, their helmets shaped like the warriors of old wars, their faces hidden behind black visors that reflected the white light. Evan tried to sit up, but pain shot through his ribs, and one of the armored figures stepped forward with a heavy staff that struck the floor, sending a soft vibration across the chamber. "You are awake, Evan Cole," a deep voice said, echoing in the room as if the walls themselves were speaking. Evan blinked and felt himself shiver. The speaker wore older armor than the rest, cracked and etched with symbols he remembered from classified briefings. This was a judge of the battle court, a secret human tribunal whispered about in military circles, a place where law and war mixed in ways no one fully understood, a place soldiers prayed they would never see. Evan forced his voice out, even though his throat felt raw. "Where am I?" he asked. The judge answered without hesitation. "You stand in the inner chamber of the battle court, where humanity decides matters too dangerous for normal law. You were brought here after the explosion on Deck 47. The words felt heavy, but Evan's mind leapt to only one thing. "The girl," he whispered urgently. "The alien girl? Is she alive?" Silence stretched for a long moment before two armored marshals stepped aside, and Evan saw her, the girl from the corridor, standing behind them with her hands bound in glowing restraint cuffs. Her silver eyes had lost their warmth, replaced by fear she could not hide. She looked at Evan as if he was the only familiar thing in the room, and he felt something pull at his chest. The judge's voice cut through the moment. "She is alive because of you, but her presence here is not a matter of safety. It is a matter of law." Evan stared at the judge, feeling the room grow colder. The judge raised a holographic panel showing the explosion's aftermath, the casualties, the chemical signature of the device, and the time-stamped frame of the girl standing near the crate moments before detonation. The court must determine whether she is an innocent witness or an agent of the Seraphis fragment, the judge declared. The girl flinched at the name, and Evan shook his head sharply. "She tried to warn the guard," he said. "I saw her. She wasn't planting anything. She was afraid. The ring of armored figures shifted slightly, as if absorbing his words, but the judge remained still. Intent must be proven, he said. And the law states that anyone who chooses to save another must accept the fate that follows. Evan felt his heart pound harder as he realized the meaning. The judge stepped closer. Evan Cole, because you risked your life to protect her, you are now bound to her case by the Guardian Clause. Before Evan could respond, the judge's next words froze the air around him. Rise, soldier, for your next choice will decide the path of peace or war. The girl looked at him with trembling hope. The court watched like silent giants, and Evan realized he had woken not just from darkness, but into a new destiny waiting to unfold. The chamber felt colder than before, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath while Evan stood facing the armored judge. The girl's silver eyes flickered with fear and hope at the same time, her small frame almost swallowed by the chains around her wrists. And Evan felt a strange pressure in his chest, a sense that this moment was heavier than the explosion that nearly killed him. The judge's voice echoed again, deep and calm. Evan Cole, by saving her life in the blast, you have invoked the Guardian Clause. You are now tied to her fate until truth is found. Evan clenched his jaw as pain still burned through his ribs, but his mind focused on the girl. She was no threat, no soldier, no carrier of destruction. She was scared and alone. The judge raised a hollow screen showing fragments of the corridor, guards shouting, a crate marked as harmless cargo, and the moment the girl ran toward it, her lips moving desperately as if trying to warn someone before the explosion tore the hallway apart. She tried to stop it, Evan said quietly. Anyone can see that. But the judges around the ring did not move. Their armor remained silent, like statues carved from forgotten battles. Intent is not enough, the lead judge replied. In war, truth must be proven, not felt. Two marshals stepped closer to Leora, their gauntlets glowing as they prepared to pull her away. She flinched like a frightened child, and something inside Evan snapped. Wait! His voice cut through the chamber, the echo sharp against the circular walls. The marshals froze, surprised. The judge did not turn his head, but everyone felt the shift in the air. Speak, Guardian, he said. Evan took a breath, ignoring the pain stabbing his side, and stepped forward. If you think she's tied to the bomb, let me prove she isn't. Give me the chance to show what really happened. The judges murmured softly, a low metallic whisper, and the girl looked at him as if he had just lifted a mountain from her shoulders. The judge finally nodded. Then hear the law of the battle court, he said. A guardian has 72 hours to find the truth. If truth is found, the accused walks free, and peace remains possible. If truth fails, the guardian must surrender the accused for execution or political exchange. Evan's breath caught for a moment, the weight of the words hitting him like another shockwave. Leora's lips parted in horror, a soft, broken sound escaping her. Execution, she whispered, her voice trembling like a thin glass thread. The judge looked at her with no emotion visible behind the visor. You stand at the center of a potential war between humans and Seraphis, he said. One spark can burn a galaxy. One lie can end a world. Evan felt his fists tighten even as his pulse pounded harder. Then let's not build a galaxy on a lie, he said firmly. Release her to my custody. The marshals hesitated, exchanging glances, then looked to the judge, who tapped the staff against the ground. Rings of light formed around Leora's restraints before dissolving into sparks, leaving her wrists free. She stepped back, rubbing the red marks where the cuffs had burned her skin. Evan wondered how long she had been chained, how terrified she must have been. The judge spoke again. You will act as her bonded guardian. She cannot leave your sight. Her actions are your responsibility. Her safety is your burden. The girl stood silently beside Evan now, her voice shaking as she whispered, Why are you helping me? Evan looked down at her, at the faint glow in her eyes and the bruise on her cheek, and answered quietly, Because you didn't deserve what happened. Because someone has to stand up for the innocent. A soft, Trembling breath left her as if she had been holding it since the explosion. The judges dispersed one by one, their armor clinking like old ghosts fading into the shadows of the chamber. The lead judge stayed behind only long enough to deliver one final warning. Your time begins now, Guardian Cole. Fail, and the court will not show mercy again. When the chamber emptied, the silence felt heavy and alive. Evan steadied himself and looked at Leora. She appeared fragile, yet filled with some quiet inner strength, her silver hair reflecting the white light, her skin marked by the dust of the blast. He offered her his hand, unsure if she would accept it, but she reached out slowly, her fingers trembling as they touched his. As they stepped out of the inner chamber, two figures waited in the dim corridor outside. One was a human officer with a scar running down his cheek. Major Rusk, a name Evan knew well from past deployments. His cold eyes studied both Evan and the girl with open suspicion. "So this is the alien you risked your life for," Rusk said, his tone sharp as steel. Evan didn't respond. Rusk stepped closer. "You're making a dangerous bet, Cole, if she's guilty. You'll go down with her if she's innocent. She'll still be hunted." Leora shrank behind Evan's arm slightly, and he felt her fingers grip his sleeve. "Then we'll find the truth before your doubts find us," Evan said, unable to stop the edge in his voice. Rusk smirked faintly. "You have 72 hours. Try not to die again." As Evan guided Leora through the long metallic corridor, he felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them from every shadow. He felt the tension of 100 political wires stretched thin, ready to snap with one wrong step. Leora whispered softly, "If I slow you down, you can leave me behind." Evan stopped walking, turning to her with a steady gaze. "I didn't take shrapnel to leave you behind. We're in this together now." Her eyes softened, the fear inside them easing just a little, and they continued walking toward the deeper levels of the court, where clues, enemies, and old ghosts waited for them. Every step felt like stepping into a new war. But Evan's resolve hardened with each breath. He saved her once from a blast of fire and metal, and now he would save her from a fire far more dangerous. The fire of truth buried in shadows. Under Harbor 9 felt like a forgotten world hidden beneath the polished floors of the upper decks, a maze of steel walkways, leaking pipes, and markets lit by flickering neon strips that hummed like tired insects. Evan guided Leora through the shifting crowds with one hand lightly on her shoulder, keeping her close as voices rose and fell around them, traders shouting prices, engines roaring, alarms whining in the distance. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and the faint metallic scent of recycled water, and every shadow felt alive with watching eyes. Leora walked carefully, her steps small but alert, as if she was trying to learn this strange human place through every sound and trembling breath. Her silver eyes scanned everything, widening at the sight of mechanical pets scurrying across the floor, narrowing when masked men leaned too close, softening only when she looked up at Evan, trusting him more than the world around her. Evan kept moving, knowing they had no time to waste. The judge's warning still echoed in his mind. 72 hours, no second chances. They pushed deeper into the underlevels until the bright markets faded into darker industrial corridors, pipes rattling overhead as steam hissed like whispers from another world. Leora suddenly slowed, her head tilting slightly, as if hearing something Evan couldn't. "What is it?" he asked softly. She closed her eyes for a moment, and then pointed toward a row of storage crates stacked crookedly against a wall. "There," she whispered. "Something wrong there. Something that remembers the explosion." Evan didn't understand her last words, but trusted her instinct. They approached the crates carefully. Leora kept one hand on the metal surface, her fingers moving slowly as if she was feeling the heartbeat of the machines. Evan scanned the area with his wrist tool and froze when it beeped sharply. The crate carried the same radiation signature as the bomb. "Faint but real." "You were right," he murmured. Lifting the lid, inside were broken components of a micronuke's casing. Wires burned, metal twisted from the blast, and on the inside of the lid was a strange symbol scratched into the steel, a blade crossed with an eye. "The Glaive Syndicate," Evan whispered, a name he hoped he would never hear again. A group known for selling war in neat boxes and chaos in silent packages. Leora touched the symbol gently, her fingers trembling. This is who set the fire," she said, using her word for the explosion. Evan nodded slowly, his heart tightening. "But why frame you?" he asked. Leora lowered her gaze. "Because I carry something they want," she whispered. She reached into the small pouch around her waist and pulled out a shard of crystal that glowed faintly with swirling blue light. "This is an heirloom of my line. It is called the Witness Shard." Evan's breath caught as he realized its importance. Royal artifacts of Seraphis were more than symbols. They carried encoded memories, maps, history, and sometimes even commands. If the right beacon reads it, Leora continued, it can open a peace lattice, a truth web that shows who is lying and who is not. Evan stared at her, feeling the world shift beneath his feet. "So someone tried to make sure you never reached that beacon," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes shining with sadness. "Yes. And now they want the humans to believe I brought the bomb myself." Before Evan could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor, heavy and fast. He pulled Leora behind a crate and signaled her to stay low. A group of armored enforcers moved past the intersection. Scanning the area with glowing visors, at their center was a woman Evan recognized at once. Kara Miles, an old ally from the Martian uprising. Now a smuggler with more enemies than allies, Evan stepped from behind the crate before they vanished entirely. "Kara," he called quietly. She froze, then turned slowly, her sharp eyes widening with surprise. "Cole," she hissed. "I heard you died." "Not yet," Evan replied. "But give it time." Kara smirked and signaled her team to stay back. Then her gaze landed on Leora, and her expression shifted instantly. "You're walking around with a Seraphis child," she said, lowering her voice. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" "She's not the enemy," Evan said firmly. "And I need information. Someone planted that bomb. And I think you know who bought the parts?" Kara crossed her arms, her eyes flicking between them. "You're hunting ghosts, Evan. The ones behind this don't leave trails." Evan pointed toward the crate with the syndicate mark. "They left this." Kara stepped closer, studying the symbol with a frown. "The white broker," she finally said. "That's who you're looking for. He moves weapons, secrets, soldiers, loyalties. Anything that keeps the galaxy burning, he'll talk to you. But he'll charge you in ways you won't like." "Where is he?" Evan asked. Kara hesitated, then sighed. "Pier 27, Old Hollow Theater. But you didn't hear it from me." Before she could say more, a sudden pulse of energy shot across the corridor, startling all three of them. Leora gasped and clutched the shard as it flickered dangerously. A dark shape appeared at the far end of the passage, and Evan recognized Major Rusk's insignia. Drones hovered beside him, their lenses glowing red. "Run!" Kara whispered sharply. "Rusk's boys won't ask questions." Evan grabbed Leora's hand, and they dashed through the maze of pipes and crates, their footsteps echoing in the metal labyrinth. Drones buzzed behind them, firing stun shots that sparked against the walls. Steam roared from a broken pipe as they slid through it. Leora stumbling but never letting go of Evan's arm. They reached a maintenance shaft. Narrow and dark, Evan pushed Leora in first, then followed and pulled the grate shut just as drones swarmed the walkway outside. Leora trembled as she pressed her forehead against her knees. Trying to steady her breathing, Evan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We're okay," he whispered. "We got what we needed," but deep inside he knew the danger was rising like a tide. The Glaive Syndicate wanted Leora's shard, Rusk wanted blood, and the White Broker was waiting in the shadows. Holding answers wrapped in lies, their 72 hours were slipping away, and every second felt heavier than the last. Evan looked at Leora in the dim light, her face tired yet brave, and he knew one thing with certainty. The explosion had only been the beginning, and the real fire was still waiting to ignite. The maintenance shaft opened into an abandoned grow farm, a place once filled with life but now left in silence. Rows of broken hydroponic frames stretched out under flickering blue lamps, dried vines hanging like forgotten memories. The warm hum of old generators mixed with the soft drip of leaking pipes, creating a strange peace in the middle of a dangerous world. Evan guided Leora inside and checked the shadows carefully before letting his guard relax. She stood beside him, breathing softly, her fingers still clutching the glowing shard at her chest. For a moment neither spoke, their bodies still trembling from the chase. Evan knelt slowly, pulling off a torn piece of his undershirt and pressing it against the bleeding wound on his side. Pain shot through him like a spark of fire, and he bit back a groan. Leora hurried to him, her eyes wide with worry. "You are hurt again," she whispered. "Let me help." Evan tried to wave her off, but she gently pushed his hand aside. Her small fingers moved with surprising skill, wrapping the makeshift bandage around his ribs with a tenderness he hadn't felt in years. The soft glow from her shard lit her face, showing the gentle concentration in her expression. "You saved me twice," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I must do something for you." He watched her work, moved by how carefully she tied each knot. "I didn't save you to get anything in return," he said softly. "I saved you because it was right," she paused, her fingers resting lightly on his bandage. "On my world," she said, "a princess is taught to be strong for her people. My mother told me that strength does not mean never crying. Strength means crying and still choosing to protect." Evan felt something shift in his chest, a feeling he had buried long ago under years of war. "Your mother was wise," he said. Leora nodded slowly, her eyes growing distant as if remembering another life. "When I was small, she brought me to the high cliffs of Keth. The sky was pink there, always alive with soft storms. She told me that if I ever found myself far away, I should remember the sound of those winds. They would help me breathe." Her voice broke for a moment. A soft crack of grief she tried to hide. Evan gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You'll see those cliffs again," he whispered. "I promise." She looked at him with a fragile hope, as if she wanted to believe but didn't know how. They sat in silence, the faint blue lights casting long shadows across the floor. After a moment, Leora lifted her shard, holding it carefully. "There is something I must show you," she said. She moved toward an old console fused into the wall, its screen covered in dust. When she touched the shard to the dead controls, a faint pulse spread across the metal, ancient circuits waking as if remembering their purpose. Lights flickered, sputtered, then aligned into a soft, shimmering display. A map unfolded in the air, glowing with lines of blue and gold. Evan stepped closer, amazed. "This is no ordinary artifact," he murmured. Leora nodded. "It carries memories of my ancestors. It can read hidden signals, paths, and codes." She pointed to a pulsing mark on the map. "This beacon. If we reach it, I can open the peace lattice. The truth will show itself and no one will be able to lie about the explosion." Evan felt a surge of determination. "Then we have our path," he said. "We find the broker to confirm who planted the bomb. Then we reach this beacon." Before Leora could reply, a faint crackle echoed behind them. Evan turned sharply, hand on his weapon. Kara Miles stepped from the shadows, a faint smirk on her face. "You two really know how to make noise," she said. Leora tensed, clutching the shard. Evan stood slowly, keeping himself between them. Kara raised her hands. "Relax, I'm alone this time," she said. "But you need to know something. Rusk isn't hunting you just to earn points with the court. He thinks handing the girl over will secure a human-only alliance in the War Council." Evan felt anger simmer inside him. He'd risk wiping out peace for political gain. Kara shrugged. "War makes people stupid." She stepped closer, eyeing the shard. "And that thing makes people greedy." Evan narrowed his eyes. "Why are you helping us?" Kara's smile faded into something tired. "Because once, long ago, you helped me when no one else would. Consider this as me paying a very old debt." Before Evan could answer, a soft vibration shook the floor. Distant but powerful, Kara's expression darkened. "That'll be Rusk's scans opening the lower gates," she said. "The broker won't wait long." "And neither will your enemies." Evan nodded, gripping Leora's hand gently. "Then it's time to move." Kara pointed toward a side passage filled with thick hanging vines and broken glass pipes. "This way leads to the old transit chapel. From there you can reach Pier 27 without crossing the patrol routes." Evan hesitated. "Will you be safe?" Kara smirked. "Safe enough for someone who knows every shadow in this place." Leora stepped forward, her voice soft but sincere. "Thank you." Kara looked startled for a moment, then gave a small nod before melting back into the darkness. Evan and Leora moved into the vine-covered passage, the air cooler and filled with the scent of damp earth. Each step echoed softly, the distant hum of engines fading behind them. Leora walked close to Evan, her shard glowing faintly as if guiding their way. Evan kept scanning the corners, every sense alert, knowing they were walking deeper into danger. But as Leora whispered quietly beside him, "We will find the truth." Evan, he felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. A quiet, steady hope weaving itself into the fear. Together they stepped deeper into the shadows, heading toward the chapel where the white broker waited, holding secrets sharp enough to save a world or burn it to ashes. The old transit chapel looked like a place forgotten by both faith and war. its broken windows letting in soft streams of pale light that fell across dusty pews and cracked hollow screens. The air felt heavy, filled with the faint smell of burnt incense and old metal. Evan guided Leora inside, his hand slightly raised as he scanned every shadow. Beneath the silence he could feel something alive, a soft vibration in the floor, a hidden power humming under their feet. Leora walked beside him with careful steps, her shard glowing faintly like a frightened heartbeat. At the far end of the chapel stood a decayed stage where holograms once played scenes of hope for travelers. Now the screens flickered with broken static, but as Evan approached, the lights shifted, forming a figure of shimmering white outlines. The white broker appeared not as a person but as a shifting collection of faces, voices and silhouettes, each one dissolving into the next like a dream refusing to stay still. "Guardian Evan Cole," the broker said, its voice layered with tones from a dozen different throats. "And Princess Leora of Seraphis, witness child of the Keithian line. I have been expecting you," Leora's breath caught, her eyes widening. "How does it know me?" she whispered. Evan stepped slightly in front of her. "We came for answers," he said. "You hold the truth behind the explosion." The broker's shape pulsed, then shifted into a calm, still form. "Truth is never held. Guardian, it is traded, it is given, taken, twisted, or buried. You should know that better than most." Evan clenched his jaw but kept still. "Tell us who planned the bomb," he said. "Tell us who wants a war." The hollow stage brightened, showing a projected crate identical to the one from the lower decks, wires glowing, charge timers blinking. A new symbol appeared beside it, the crest of a human admiral Evan recognized instantly. His heart tightened. "No," he whispered. The broker's shifting face rotated to stare at him. "Yes, Guardian. The bomb was commissioned by Admiral Dreven Holt, a man sworn to protect your world, yet willing to sacrifice millions to ensure a final war that places humanity above all other species." Leora stepped forward, her hands trembling. "But why frame me?" she asked, her voice cracking. The broker turned its focus to her. "Because you carry the shard that could reveal him. Because your truth is dangerous, and dangerous truth must be silenced before it spreads." Evan's fists clenched tighter. "Show us the proof," he demanded. The broker tilted its shimmering head. "Proof has a cost." Evan narrowed his eyes. "What cost?" The broker stepped closer, its voice lowering into a whisper of static. "Your freedom, Guardian, your silence, or your life," Leora gasped quietly. But Evan didn't look away. "I'll pay it," he said. "Just give us the data packet, Evan." "No," Leora breathed, stepping closer to him. Her hand gripping his arm, he turned to her gently. "We don't have time," he whispered. "If we fail, war begins." For a long moment, the chapel held nothing but silence. Then the broker's form softened, as if amused or touched. "Very well," it said. "But the price is changed." The air thickened as the hollow screen flickered violently. "Your offer is brave, Guardian, but unnecessary. I ask instead for a promise from the princess." Leora stiffened. "What promise?" "That once she carries this truth to the beacon and reveals the Admiral's lie, she will not allow her people to use the lattice against humanity," the broker said. "Truth is a weapon, Princess, and weapons can kill either side." Leora swallowed hard, the weight of the request sinking into her bones. Evan watched her, seeing fear and responsibility crash together in her eyes like two storms trying to swallow each other. Then she lifted her chin slowly. "I promise," she whispered. The shard in her hands glowed brighter, a soft warmth spreading like a pulse of trust. "The truth will not be used to harm, only to heal." The broker bowed its shimmering head. "Then the deal is struck." A pulse of blue light burst from the stage, forming a small data cube that floated toward Evan. He caught it carefully, the surface warm in his hand. Files filled with names, orders, encrypted messages, and covert transaction logs shimmered inside the cube like trapped fireflies. This was the proof needed to clear Leora and expose the Admiral. But before Evan could say anything, a metallic thud echoed from the entrance. The door burst open as stun drones flooded into the chapel, their red lenses glowing like burning eyes. Major Rusk followed behind them with a cold anger in his face. "End of the line, Cole," he shouted. "Step away from the alien and drop the data." Leora tensed. Her breath shaking, Evan stepped in front of her, shielding her as the drones hovered with weapons humming. "Rusk, listen," Evan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're being used. The Admiral planned the blast, we have proof, but Rusk raised his rifle without hesitation. You think I care about your fantasies, he said. She's a threat. And you're compromised. The broker flickered rapidly as the drones advanced. Guardian, your time is up, it whispered. Evan needed seconds, just seconds. He grabbed a broken metal frame beside him and smashed a flickering lamp. Sparks flew, plunging the chapel into darkness except for Leora's shard glowing like a tiny star. Run, Evan breathed, pulling Leora behind a row of pews as drones fired stun bolts that flashed through the air like electric rain. The broker's illusions twisted, turning the chapel into a maze of false corridors and shifting mirrors, confusing the drones long enough for Evan and Leora to slip through a side door. Shots ricocheted off the walls as they plunged into a narrow service tunnel. Leora's breathing ragged, Evan pulling her along despite the pain in his ribs. Behind them, Rusk shouted in rage, and the sound echoed like a promise of more danger to come. They didn't stop until they reached a rusted ladder leading toward the upper shafts. Evan pressed his forehead against the cold metal, breathing hard. Leora clutched the shard against her heart as if it were the last safe thing in the universe. Evan turned to her and whispered, "We have the truth now." But even as the words left his lips, he felt the weight of a new question forming inside him. If truth was this hard to reach, how much harder would it be to make the world believe it? The climb toward the peace beacon began with the sound of their own breathing, soft and shaky, echoing through the narrow shaft as Evan led Leora upward one rung at a time. The ladder shook with every movement, dust falling like gray snow onto their shoulders. Above them was the upper transit ring, a place abandoned decades ago, a place only ghosts and desperate fugitives dared to enter. Evan pushed open the hatch and pulled Leora up beside him, letting her rest for a moment as cold air washed over them from the open space ahead. The upper ring stretched out in dim silver light, a massive circular walkway overlooking the old orbital lift towers below. Broken screens flickered against the distant walls. Sparks crackled from old cables, and the wind carried the lonely hum of machines half asleep. Leora looked around, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. "This place feels sad," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Because it remembers what it used to be." They walked cautiously, each step echoing through the hollow chamber. Leora held the shard close to her chest, its glow pulsing in gentle waves, guiding them toward the hidden beacon at the far end of the ring. The data cube from the broker remained in Evan's pocket, warm and heavy like a loaded truth waiting to explode. Halfway across the ring, Leora suddenly stopped, her breath unsteady. "Evan," she whispered, "something is watching us." Evan's hand went to his weapon instantly, scanning the shadows around them. At first there was nothing, only silence and flickering lights. Then a shape dropped from the ceiling with a metallic thud, followed by two more syndicate snipers, their armor dark as night, their rifles aimed with cold precision. Evan pushed Leora behind a pillar as the first shot rang out, sparks bursting from the ground where she had been standing a heartbeat earlier. "Stay down," he whispered, firing back with sharp, precise bursts. The snipers moved like shadows, quick and coordinated. Their rifles hummed with lethal energy, each shot lighting the air with thin white streaks. Leora pressed against the pillar, trembling, the shard glowing brighter as if reacting to danger. "Evan, I can draw them away with light," she whispered. "No," he said instantly. "They'll kill you." But she shook her head, her voice soft yet fierce. "I am not weak. Let me help you." Before he could stop her, she raised the shard slightly, letting its blue glow spill across the ring. The syndicate rifles jerked as the sensors struggled to read her shifting aura. Evan used the distraction, rolling to the side and firing a clean shot that hit one sniper's visor, sending him sprawling across the metal floor. The second sniper fired back, but Evan ducked behind a rusted console, his heart pounding as lasers sliced through the air mere inches from him. The third sniper moved fast, repositioning above them on an overhead beam. Evan saw the glint of the rifle turning toward Leora. "Leora, move," he shouted. She dove sideways just as a white-hot bolt scorched the floor where she had stood. Evan fired upward, the shot striking the beam and knocking the sniper off balance. The man fell with a heavy crash, and Evan rushed forward, knocking the rifle away before delivering a final blow that sent him collapsing. Silence returned slowly, broken only by Leora's shaky breath and the hum of distant turbines. Evan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded weakly. "The shard." It hurts when danger is close, Evan frowned, brushing a strand of silver hair from her forehead. Then we'll protect it, and you, they continued forward, moving through narrow walkways and old maintenance tunnels that wound around the giant lift engine. Each step brought them closer to the beacon, which pulsed faintly through the air like a distant heartbeat calling to the shard. But danger was not finished chasing them. The moment they reached the last platform before the beacon, the air filled with the roar of engines. A gunship descended through the broken roof, its lights blazing like angry stars. Major Rusk stood on the ramp, armored and furious, his eyes locked on Evan with cold rage. "Guardian Cole," he shouted. "Stand down and surrender the alien." Leora clung to Evan's arm. Her breath trembling, Evan stepped in front of her. "Rusk," he called out. "The Admiral planned the explosion." "We have proof." Rusk slammed his fist against the side of the gunship. "Lies," he barked. "You've been manipulated." "You don't see the bigger picture." Drones flew out from the gunship, circling them with red lenses glowing. Leora's shard flickered violently, its light straining as if trying to shield them, but failing under the pressure. Evan raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't reaching for a weapon. "Rusk, listen to me," he said. "Look at the data cube." "Just look at it," but Rusk shook his head. "I follow orders." "Not fairy tales." One drone drifted closer. Aiming directly at Leora's chest, Evan felt his heartbeat freeze. Then something unexpected happened. A figure stepped onto the gunship ramp. The man Evan had spared earlier, Rusk's own sergeant. The sergeant looked from Evan to Leora, then back at Rusk. "Sir," he said quietly. "The girl doesn't look like an enemy." Rusk glared at him. "Stand down, Sergeant." But the sergeant didn't lower his rifle. His hesitation was enough. Evan seized Leora's hand and ran toward the beacon's final staircase as bolts of light rained behind them. They reached the base of the beacon, a towering structure of old alloy and shimmering energy veins. Leora pressed the shard against the interface, her breath trembling as a soft glow spread outward. The beacon awakened, sending pulses of light through the air that made the whole station tremble. Evan held her steady as she closed her eyes, her voice shaking. "It's opening, Evan." "The truth is opening." Behind them, Rusk shouted orders. Drones surged closer. The gunship roared like a beast preparing to strike. But Evan stood firm, shielding Leora with his whole body as the beacon's light rose like the first dawn. And as the truth began to shine across the dark station, Evan realized something powerful and terrifying. The truth might save lives, but it could also destroy everything that came before it. The beacon's light stretched across the station like a living web, casting long, trembling shadows across the metal floors and broken walls. Evan felt the warmth of Leora's hand pressed against his, her fingers trembling as the shard pulsed against the interface, sending waves of blue and gold energy spiraling outward. The air hummed with a sound both soft and deafening, a tone that carried truth itself, vibrating in the bones of every human and alien within reach. Leora's eyes squeezed shut, her lips moving in a language Evan could not understand. Yet he felt the weight of her words, a prayer, a vow, a command to the lattice that carried her ancestors' will. The shard glowed brighter, and a pulse shot upward like a flare, casting the distant orbit towers in gold and silver light, making the entire station feel alive, connected and fragile all at once from the shadows above. The gunship trembled as if shaken by the beacon's force. Rusk's face was pale, his hands gripping the rail as he realized the scope of what Evan and Leora had done. The drones hovered uncertainly, their targeting systems disrupted, the red glows flickering to orange, then fading entirely. The sergeant Evan had spared stepped forward again, his rifle lowered, staring at the lattice with awe, understanding finally dawning on him. Evan watched Leora carefully, every muscle tense, her shoulders shaking as the shard stabilized, and he whispered, "You're doing it, Leora. You're showing the truth." She opened her eyes slowly, silver light shining through them as if reflecting the lattice itself. "It is not enough to see," she murmured. "It must be believed." Across the station, screens flickered to life, projecting the data from the broker's cube, showing the Admiral's orders, the shipment of explosives, the signatures of the conspirators, the lines connecting human fleets and Seraphis operatives in a tangled web of deceit. Every image shone with irrefutable proof. Every document carried the weight of truth, and the viewers, human and alien alike, gasped as lies crumbled in real time. Rusk's jaw tightened, his hands shaking as he tried to find a reason to act, but hesitation gripped him. The sergeant's quiet courage and the beacon's undeniable proof were more powerful than his anger. Each pulse of light from the lattice carried the words and actions of those who sought war. Leaving no hiding place, no excuse, no shelter for lies, Evan felt a rush of relief mixed with dread, knowing the moment was both an ending and a beginning. Leora's shard reached the final surge, glowing with a blinding intensity that made Evan shield his eyes. "Almost there," she whispered, her voice strained but determined. He nodded, his grip on her hand tightening. "You can do it." The Admiral's fleet, watching from orbit, froze as the lattice flashed across their command screens, showing the orders he had given, the lives he had risked, the false narratives he had created. For a moment, silence fell across every ship, every station as truth spread like wildfire, unstoppable, undeniable. On the station, the drones powered down. The gunship engines shuddered, and Rusk lowered his weapon slowly, finally looking at Evan with something like respect mixed with fear. "You did it," he said, his voice hoarse. Evan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We did it together," he said, glancing at Leora, whose hands were still glowing faintly with the shard's energy. She smiled softly, exhaustion and relief shining through. "The lattice. It is awake," she whispered. "The truth will not be hidden again." From a distance, Kara emerged from the shadows, limping slightly but alive, her eyes wide as she took in the beacon, the lattice, and the glowing shard in Leora's hands. "You fools," she said with a grin. "You actually did it," Evan chuckled weakly. "We had to." Leora turned toward Evan, her voice trembling with emotion. "You risked everything for me, for peace." Evan shook his head. "I didn't risk it for you alone. I risked it for everyone who deserves a chance to live without lies and fear." The beacon's light began to settle into a steady glow, the lattice forming a visible bridge between humans and Seraphis alike. The proof of the Admiral's betrayal spread across communications networks, intercepted channels, and council terminals, making the entire galaxy witness the truth simultaneously. The weight of all the deceit and danger lifted slightly, replaced by the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this would be enough to prevent a war. Evan guided Leora to the edge of the platform, their hands still clasped, the shard now humming softly, almost like a heartbeat. She looked out at the vast orbiting fleets below, the distant stars reflecting in her silver eyes. "What now?" she asked softly. He squeezed her hand gently. "Now we make sure it lasts. We make sure the truth is honored. We protect it together." Rusk, standing a few paces away, finally lowered his head in acknowledgement. Kara gave a nod from the shadows, and the sergeant, still wide-eyed, simply saluted. A quiet peace settled over the station. A pause in the storm, fragile and precious. Leora stepped forward, raising the shard slightly, its light bathing them both. "We will hold the line," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Between fear and hope." Evan nodded, feeling the weight of every life that depended on this moment. Every scar, every sacrifice, every risk had led them here, to a choice between destruction and the chance for a better future. And as the lattice's glow stretched outward into the darkness of space, Evan realized that their journey was far from over. But for the first time, he believed that humanity and Seraphis could stand together, bound by truth, courage, and the fragile light of hope that neither war nor lies could extinguish.